Okay, this is week 16 in a 16-week course. So, you know what that means, right? Yeah, it's time for the final exam. Okay, things really haven't changed. The rules haven't really changed from the midterm exam, but let's just go through it. So this is not comprehensive, meaning it's only covering chapters 7 to 13, the second half of the book. I am providing you this review of all the topics, and so please do look at the topics list. The idea is, instead of you studying this much information, you can just study the amount that you know is going to be on, or most likely going to be on the exam. Yes, you do have to study for the exam. And of course, when you're done, I want you to finish that very last journal. And the very last journal is going to ask them this kind of questions like, how much time did you spend on studying? It's also going to ask you some questions about what you liked and what you didn't like. Okay, just a note. I have to turn your grades in the following Monday. So this thing is due at 11:59 on Sunday. And I mean, the next morning, I've got to be turning in your grades. So there's going to be no opportunity for any late fees at all. If you are late, you're going to get a 0 on this guy, okay? You have been warned. All right. So let's just go through the list of topics. So once again, this is just a list of topics that may appear on the exam. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up in Notepad just so it's a little bigger. Okay. Again, the rules haven't changed, so let's go through them. It's open book, open internet, open everything. Doesn't matter, right? You're sitting at home, so it's okay. There's going to be 40 questions in a pool, but you're not going to get 40. You're going to get 25 of them, plus 2 questions that everyone gets. And then the machine's going to randomly pick these things. They're not going to be in any particular order. So just remember that. And I give you the chapter and page number, but that's really to help you study it. I do not really want you or expect you to, when it comes to 7 basic tools, to go open the book, go to page 308 and start reading. You don't have that much time to do that. So this is designed to zero in on something, hopefully more for studying than actually during the exam. Just saying. And then the no in the column here basically means it either wasn't covered adequately or covered at all in the book, and therefore you have to rely on lecture notes instead. As always, about 20% of the material is from lecture and not in the book, and this is time you have 1 hour and 15 minutes. So let's just go through the list, and here we go. So the first one talks about accurate cost estimates. If you recall, a lot of people believe that trying to get an accurate cost estimate for a software project is a dumb idea, because this just historically estimates have been incredibly poor. The book basically says that's hogwash, and so there's some real legitimate tools that you can use to get good cost estimates. Profit margin. I mean, this is kind of straightforward. We talk about, if I'm making $5 for every $20 investment, then I should be able to do the math and figure out what my profit margin is. I mean, this is kind of straightforward stuff. You remember the discussion about tangible and intangible versus direct and indirect cost? Okay, so direct and indirect are those things like this is my salaries for working on this project, but indirect costs would be like a proportion of the utility bills for the company. That's and then tangible versus intangible. Tangible costs are those that are easy to measure, like in dollars. Intangible costs would be like, loss of productivity or customer dissatisfaction, things that are difficult to quantify in dollars and cents. Sunk cost. We had some discussions about, I've already put $10 million in this project, and it turns out it's a complete flop, and I'm going to need another $3 million to finish it. So how much of that previous cost should I consider when trying to decide whether or not I want to spend $3 million to finish this project? Now, human nature, unfortunately, doesn't do a very good job at this. The cost estimating tools. There's lots of different types of tools. There's one that's very analytic, where use some sort of a formula to come up with something, and those are very, very useful for coming up for cost estimates. There's other types where you just say, well, we've done this before, and so I'll just take my experience with last time, those kind of tools. So you need to know a little bit about that. Earned value management. I'm kind of a fan, if you haven't figured that out. Earned value management is a really cool way. If you do it right and maintain it and keep it, whenever there's changes to your project, you can actually be able to predict, how long the project's going to take based upon where you are. You're 50% through, but you've had some slips. So when's the real completion date, and what's the real cost at the end? Those are pretty good predicting tools. I like that. Conformance versus fitness. You remember, conformance basically says, I've met the requirements. It says to have 5 of these, and I do have 5 of these. Well, yeah, but it don't work. Well, too bad. It didn't say it had to work. It said they had to have 5 of them, so here they are. So yeah, fitness is all about, okay, it actually functions and everyone's happy and it does what it's supposed to do. So you need both conformance and fitness in order to get a successful software project. I talked about quality control and quality assurance, and there's two different. The reason why there's a plus there, because that's just the chapter the page number for the first one. Anyway, quality control and quality assurance, kind of sort of different, and so I may ask you some questions about what the difference between the two are. Which describes the quality control versus quality assurance. The next one talks about system performance. If you recall, not everyone has the same view of what performance is. It could be a time-based things like operations per second. It could be all sorts of other things. But if you look at that section, I don't think you'll have any trouble. How do you measure the performance of a system? It kind of almost goes back to, how do you measure the quality of a system? Not quality. Yeah, quality. Where some people, success, that was the word I was after. Some people say it's successful if it's under budget. Some people say it's successful if it's, under the time schedule. And other people say, well, it's successful if it met the quality requirements. So this is more about system performance. How do you do the measurement for coming up with system performance? The 7 basic tools. Okay, this is all those charting kind of things. You remember we talk about Gantt charts and that kind of stuff, and Pareto charts and all those things. Basically it's a list of things that people continuously use when they're doing quality control kind of things. There's a whole basic list of tools where you can go through, and so know a little bit about those. I may ask you, which one of these is the one that does, frequency distribution, or which one of these shows 2 factors, and which one of these, just one of those kind of a question. So you need a little bit about it. Testing. In the system development lifecycle, SDLC, testing has an actual chunk. We also talked about unit testing, and unit testing typically is not done in the testing phase, although just by the name of it, you'd think that'd be the case, but it's not. So I'm going to ask you some questions about what takes place in testing, or what does not take place in testing. Cool. Workplace factors. Remember we talked about how, let's say you have a bunch of developers, and you say, well, we're going to go in and we're going to give you the latest and greatest version of Visual Studio that just came out. That will make you more productive. And the answer is no. It's not really that kind of environment. What will make a programmer more efficient is you provide them a nice, quiet place that they can think and not being distracted by the rest of the world. A cube farm is probably not the best place for programmers because there's too much chatter and too much noise, too much distraction. You probably need to have them kind of in a nice, quiet place. So if you recall from the lecture, a lot of things affect quality, but not in the way you might think. Okay. Chapter 9 is all the pop psychology stuff. Remember the motivation theories? I'm just going to ask you, which one of the motivation theories does this? Which one is Hertzberg? Which one is, Briggsmeyer? Which one is that? So which theory best describes, and I'll give you a scenario. You pick which one of those things it is. Cool. Emotional intelligence. So when people are interviewing, particularly for an IT job or a security job or whatever, it's important that they find somebody who has the right communication skills. And this emotional intelligence is almost as important, or maybe more, than their technical skills. There could be a Sheldon Cooper kind of a job where you could bury them in the organization and they don't talk to any customers. That'd be okay. But most of the time, these jobs do require you to talk to people, and therefore you do have to have an awful lot of emotional intelligence. The next one talks about that responsibility matrix, where you basically list all of what they call an organizational breakdown structure, but that's kind of overdone, versus the work breakdown structure. And so basically map them all out, saying this organization is doing that, this organization is responsible for that, this organization is going to review this. And so it's just a listing of who shot John, who's doing what, who's responsible for initiating the action, reviewing the action, or whatever it is. Okay, a lot of good stuff in that. The Myers-Briggs thing, you guys can remember that if you've ever taken the Myers-Briggs test, it'll basically tell you, where you are on the scale of things. But the bottom line is programmers tend to not be normal, and not be the type of person who is representative in the general population. I mean, their personality traits are going to be different, and so you kind of need to know about that. The next one talks about handling conflicts. Remember, there's different categories of handling conflicts. One of them was bury your head in the sand, and some of them are designed to, just not talk about the problem, and some of them are designed for, you need to head on, and those kind of things. So I'm going to ask you, remember that little tic-tac-toe board? They had how important the tasks were, how much, what's the weight of the interpersonal relationships versus the importance. And so, you need to be kind of paying attention to the upper corner. Yep. So I'm going to ask you one of those. I'm going to give you a scenario. Say which one of these is of these types is most likely going to be the best approach for scenario A. The next one talks about the group and individual communications needs. So if you recall, one of the cool things I always think is strange is that people don't really understand. Here's a common scenario. Let's say you have a team of 6, and you're deep into this project, and you're about 75% done, but you're running behind by about a month. And so management comes in and says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you an extra programmer, and that way you can make up the lost time. And you're going, no, you won't. I mean, adding people that late into the process is going to actually probably slow the project down, not speed it up, because of all the communication requirements that I've got to stop and explain what's going on and do this. And, I'll be spending more time trying to get the new guy up to speed and not being able to do my work. So this group and individual communication needs is kind of important. The next one, kind of sort of related, talks about formal and informal communication. Remember, initially talked about how, body language and tone of voice and, all those kinds of things, gesturing and stuff, is a heck of a lot more important than what you actually say. And a lot of people pick up on that. And so video lectures such as this provides a halfway decent way of doing it. It's not perfect. But, you don't want to just have something written down and post it on a bulletin board and say, well, okay, I've effectively communicated. No, you haven't. So need to talk about the difference between formal and informal communication. The next one talks about this communication management plan. So in theory, you have actually put together a plan that says, here's how I'm going to communicate to this shareholder. This is how I'm going to communicate to this stakeholder. Whew. Anyway, this is how you're going to communicate with all these stakeholders. And if you recall, most likely they're kind of tailor-made. So when talking to the customers, I'm going to do this. When talking to the management, I'm going to do this. And so, a plan on how you're going to do this communication. The next one talks about the media choices. There was a pretty good table in the book that says, okay, I'm trying to give praise, so I would use a meeting because you want to give praise to everyone. If I'm fussing at people, I probably want to do that one-on-one. That kind of stuff. Where to choose, meeting or email or telephone call, that kind of stuff. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so you know what's going on.